Doc Rivers has once again shown us that he's possibly one of the biggest fraudsters in the NBA after tossing a 3-2 lead in the Eastern Conference semis. Now, there's a lot to be said about Embiid's brutal collapse in Game 7, and a lot of other problems with the team, but given Doc's illustrious history of throwing playoff series, clocking in at 3 thrown 3-1 series, and now 4 thrown 3-2 series, we should definitely have seen this coming from the biggest joke of a coach in the entire NBA. Does this sound harsh to you? It really shouldn't, and we'll explain why through the depressing history of Doc Rivers. This recent collapse of the Sixers under Doc and his dismissal also has us wondering, will Doc finally be forced into retirement after yet another season on a major team thrown out the window, or will he keep slithering around the NBA like the snake that he is? We've already made a video covering the history of Doc in depth, which you can find here. However, here's a brief rundown. After a pretty good playing career, all things considered, Doc Rivers managed to find himself coaching his first season on the Orlando Magic in 1999. Somehow in his first season, he wins Coach of the Year despite being on a team that ended the regular season 41-41 and didn't even make the playoffs despite having a young Ben Wallace on the roster. If these results weren't tampered with, then I don't really know what the voters that year were smoking. It must have been unreal though. In his next few seasons with the Magic, he was given an absolute blessing in a young Tracy McGrady who would instantly turn into a bucket machine the moment he got to the Magic. What did he do with this blessing, you ask? Well, the Magic under Doc finished the majority of their seasons around the 500 mark, just barely squeaking into the playoffs, which is a huge disappointment for having one of the greatest scorers of all time on your team. In the 3 playoffs that Doc's Magic made, they got 3-1'd twice in the first round of 01 and 02, and then something magical happened in 03. The Magic behind T-Mac going berserk had managed to get up 3-1 in the first round. It was finally happening. Was Doc going to break out of the first round? Nope, they actually lost 4-3, and this would be the first of many thrown 3-1 leads. After this, the team was completely devastated and went 1-10 to start the next season. This is where Doc rightfully gets fired and takes the rest of the season off to reflect. Luckily, Doc was able to completely piggyback off of T-Mac's rise to superstardom and fool the world that he was a world-class coach. In the 04-05 season, Doc managed to finesse his way onto a team that had already been seeing success. The emerging Boston Celtics that would soon become one of the first modern super teams. The Celtics already had a number of postseason appearances, including a conference finals appearance in the 02 playoffs, and were definitely looking to have a bright future with Paul Pierce entering his prime at the helm. Yet, they felt like they needed something to really push them past the competition. This something wasn't Doc, as they failed to make the postseason for 2 years in a row, following a swift first-round exit in Doc's first year as coach. It really wasn't looking too good for Doc at this point. But just like on the Magic, Doc got another all-time great player to piggyback off of. In the 2007 offseason, fresh off a season where they didn't even make the playoffs, the Celtics had acquired Kevin Garnett in a blockbuster trade. This was enough to propel the team to eventually win that year's championship and shock everyone. This is where Doc received his esteemed reputation as a top coach in the NBA. And it was impressive given the previous season's shortcomings. But let's think about this for a second. That Celtics team was absolutely stacked with a main core of Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. The team also had amazing support players around that core, with a few examples being Rajon Rondo and Tony Allen. So in essence, I feel that Air Bud probably could have coached this team given the insane amount of talent. Of course, Doc's main philosophy of just let them play their game would work on a team that looked like the All-Star team. Anyway, the team only regressed from there, given that the players were getting up there in age. When the team finally fell apart a few years down the line and traded KG and Pierce to Brooklyn, it was time for Doc to find a new grift. Fortunately for Doc, there was a new opening for the head coach of the LA Clippers, a team that had been making noise for a few years with Chris Paul, a young Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan, also known as Lob City. This team, while very good and very flashy, was not at the level of that Celtics team, and Doc would have to really come up with some genius coaching strategies to really push this team to contender status. But he never did that. Not only did the Clippers not win a chip, but they never even made the finals or even conference finals during Doc's tenure as head coach. To add insult to injury, Doc threw another one of his famed 3-1 leads in 2015 with this team, which no doubt helped lead to its collapse later down the line. Now, you would think that the world would be onto his games by now, but yet again Doc gets a blessing from the heavens. Doc stays on as head coach despite the talented Lob City failing to do anything noteworthy, and as the nursing home brothers Kawhi Leonard and Paul George fall into the team purely because they want to play, or sit on the bench, together and live in their hometown. This is where Doc throws yet another 3-1 lead to the Nuggets in the second round of the 2020 playoffs, and finally steps down from the Clippers. Given that Doc had coached a busload of all-time great players at different points in his career, yet accomplished practically nothing with those players besides one chip on a super team, should have meant that with his Clippers exit, Doc would be NBA history. As we all know, this wasn't the case though, as the 76ers have been the recent victims of a vicious scam by Dr. Rivers. Now, I could keep ragging on Doc, and I should. He's terrible. The Sixers have chronically underperformed in the playoffs since he's gotten there, and he's single-handedly destroyed the mental of Ben Simmons. However, I think not even Doc saw Embiid's pathetic collapse in Game 7 coming. I mean, the supposed MVP was completely invisible, and was pouting like a child out there instead of taking it upon himself to win the game like a most valuable player should. Of course, maybe if Doc Rivers had some strategy in his coaching rather than just getting megastars to just play their game, we wouldn't have games where the main star in Embiid is smothered and can't get anything going. Generally, teamwork and systems are good.
After a blowout loss in Game 7 against the Celtics, the 76ers had finally had enough of the Doc Rivers reign, and for the fourth time in his career, Dr. Glenn had found himself packing up his desk and hitting the road. But unlike the past years, it seems that he had finally saw the light and realized that the league would do good without a year of the Rivers show. As just recently on the Bill Simmons podcast, Doc had announced that he was taking a year off to do, quote, a little bit of podcasts and TVs, end quote, whatever that means. So it seems that for the 2023-24 season, there will be one less psychotic looking coach yelling on the sidelines. But I mean, with his interest in wanting to do TVs and an opening on Undisputed, there's a small chance you'll still get to see Doc's insane screaming more than ever going up against Skip. In that same episode, Bill also mentions that among the league and active NBA coaches, many of them actually look up to Doc as one of the greats, for some insane reason. So there is a good chance that there will be an open position should Doc choose to return. And with Monty Williams recently locking down a $70 million coaching deal with the Pistons, the money incentive might be looking too good to pass up. And with Doc having a longer tenure in the league and managing to trick the entire league into thinking he's not just Coach Bud with a deeper voice, there should be a lot more pull that comes with his next hire. As he was previously the head of basketball operations with the Clippers, but one of the possible reasons the Clippers might have fired him was reportedly due to Doc passing up on MPJ, so it's yet to be seen if another team will trust him with that much responsibility again. But by the time that Doc is ready to come back, there will likely be a position opening up with a team that will be in need of both a coach and a president of basketball operations. As long-term NBA coach Greg Popovich has been throwing out hints that he could be looking at retirement. And with the Spurs about to lock up one of the great draft prospects of the game in Victor Wembanyama, and plenty of cap space that the Spurs are most likely going to use over the next couple of seasons to surround Wemby with, the team should be in a pretty good position. And as everyone should know by now, that Doc doesn't accept a job unless there's already an amazing team established. And if Victor manages to live up to his unreal expectations, then this would easily be the most talented player that Doc has ever coached. Now, of course, his track record with younger players and their on-court and off-court mental development isn't necessarily the greatest, but honestly, there's still a very likely chance that there won't be too many takers knocking on Doc's door once he's ready to return to the league. So there is a chance that we might have already seen his last game as a head coach. It's been a long 24 years with Doc being a head coach. And although personally, I will miss watching teams completely collapse after being up 3-1 with their coach looking just as lost as they are, it will be nice to get some new faces coaching this league. Ones that don't continuously fail upwards for a quarter of a century. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far in the video, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications not to miss another upload, and we'll see you next Saturday.